Hey guys, we're going to start with core values. I try to include this in the intro or at the very beginning of this course because the core values are really the foundation that the rest of this course is built off of. Without core values, the rest of it falls apart, right? This is fundamental. And I'm going to share my core values with you, the ones that I've found to be very applicable for the HOA and condo management space. I encourage you to adopt these, but you can add your own as well. I mean, you're not limited to these, but I found these to be really critical to be good at what it is that we're all trying to do. So this is something where if you're just a regular homeowner, just make sure that your board and your management company is reflecting these core values. And if you're on the board in some way, shape, or form, try to cultivate and make sure that you are representing or reflecting or cultivating these core values well. So I have an acronym that I use to teach and remember these. And I train all of my team on our core values. Tag high, right? So I think of it like you tag high, there's a standard, there's a bar, you're trying to reach it, okay? And they're not in order of importance, but it is easier to remember. So, T. First one is transparency. This is the first thing that I find is lacking in most associations and management companies. When people come to us upset that things aren't being run well, this is usually their number one complaint, that there's a lack of transparency. They don't know what's going on behind closed doors. It's really important that a management company or a board of directors is transparent with ownership, specifically about how decisions are being made and anything related to money. Unit owners should have access to, at least on a monthly or quarterly basis, a balance sheet, a profit and loss, a budget versus actual. They should have access to the budget. They should have access to see the expense report. It's very important that unit owners be able to see this stuff, even the invoices. What are we paying for? What do the invoices look like? Are they detailed? That's all important stuff. The one thing that you cannot disclose to owners is people's personal finances. So you cannot give them access to any reports that are going to show who's behind and how much they're behind by, right? You can't show the unit number, you can't show the name. That is considered personal information, and unit owners don't have the right to see how much their neighbors have paid or if they're behind or any of that stuff. They can only see how the association is doing overall. And you can say, 9 people are behind on their dues, but you can't say which 9 people those are or which 9 units those are. Besides that, I'm a huge advocate of transparency and being as transparent as possible as often as possible. The software we use, the reason why I love it and the reason why the boards I work with love it is because it allows us a really high level of transparency. They can see every transaction in real time, every invoice, every communication, everything is recorded in there and available for everybody to see, especially the board members. And I can toggle permissions on and off to allow certain owners to access things that they should have the right to access, right? So transparency is number one. The next one is accountability, okay? Okay, accountability. This is really important for leadership in general. In the reading list, you're going to see a whole section of books about leadership and strategies and tactics around being a good leader and being an effective leader. And all of them have in common this quality right here. It's accountability. It's saying, what is my part in this issue that was created, right? Weak leaders always point the finger and blame other people for every situation. Weak leaders are always going to find how it's not their fault. I can't trust someone in a leadership role, whether they're on the board or a property manager, that's always blaming someone else for their woes. To be a strong leader and a good leader and a leader that people can trust, it requires taking accountability for your actions as well as the actions of your team, right? If you're a leader on a football team and you guys lose the game, even if you're not the one who dropped the pass at the end of the game, a strong leader will say, I take accountability. I could have made plays earlier in the game so it didn't get to that point at the end where it was hinging on one person catching the game-winning pass, right? I could have done more throughout the process to prevent us from getting into that situation to begin with, right? So accountability is really important to find ways that you could have improved the situation and saying, I will put this on my shoulders and I will march us forward rather than always pointing the blame at other people, right? So it's about taking accountability, and then privately, if someone else is messing up, we can show them or make them accountable for their actions. But at a public level, in front of everybody, we always take accountability, especially if it was on our watch, especially if we were part of the team where this thing happened. People make mistakes. That's okay. Mistakes can be forgiven. However, not ever taking accountability for the mistakes, that cannot be forgiven. I'm going to share one more thing that I learned recently, or someone else phrased it better recently. And it's about internal locus of control versus external locus of control. So does that mean that the location of control in my life is internal or external? To give you an example, if I am someone who always feels as though the world is happening to me, I feel like I'm a victim of Murphy's Law, or I'm a victim of society, or I'm a victim of my upbringing, or I'm a victim of my life circumstances. That creates an external locus of control. That means that the thing that is controlling my life is outside of myself. I am just a victim. I'm along for the ride. Life is happening to me. And that's a really difficult and powerless place to be. An internal locus of control is shifting, and you can move the locus of control in your life just by your mindset and how you look at it. So creating an internal locus of control is saying, I am responsible, or what is the part that I played in these things that happened to me, right? What could I have done differently? And it's not to say that you blame yourself for everything, but it's to, in a logical and rational way, say, a lot of these things that happened were unfair, and a lot of them were in fact out of my control. However, there are pieces of every situation that I did have control over. And identifying those pieces and then making adjustments based on what we've learned is part of internal locus of control. A really good example that I see with boards and HOAs a lot is when people say stuff that upsets us. A lot of times people have this reaction of, you offended me. You said something that hurt my feelings. You did this, which made me feel this way. That's an external locus of control. That's a perspective that is focused on the world happening to me. A healthier way to handle that is every emotion that I feel is an emotion that I am allowing myself to feel, right? So nobody can make me feel anything. Nobody can actually insult me. Nobody can make me feel any kind of way other than myself. And if I'm feeling a certain kind of way, it's because I have allowed what they've said to affect me that way. I've allowed what they're doing to affect me that way. And it's easier said than done, but it's a perspective shift that if we practice it, it's a very empowering shift in perspective, because now we have control over our surroundings. We have control if someone's saying something to us, whether we choose to let it offend us or not. And I think that ties in closely with accountability and something that we need to be cognizant of. All right, moving on. G, gratitude. Why do I use gratitude? Gratitude is important because in the HOA space and property management in general, there's a lot of anger and resentment and hostility. And resentment and gratitude are polar opposites, right? So resentment and gratitude cannot live in the same place at the same time. Let me put that versus resentment. So we have to choose which of these emotions we are going to train our brain to look for. And a lot of core value work is just how are we training our brain? What are we training ourselves to value and find as important? With gratitude, we're looking for the silver lining. We're the eternal optimist. We are finding all the ways that we can be grateful. I had a mentor about 10 years ago. I was a pretty negative person in general. And so he recommended that every night before bed, I make a gratitude list. Sometimes just 5 things I was grateful for in my life. Sometimes 10, sometimes 15. But can we make a list? What are the things we have to be grateful for? It might be hard at first, especially if our brain is trained on resentment and finding the negativity or everything that could be better, everything that's crappy in our life. It's going to be hard to shift our mindset to this. But it's something we can train and something we can develop. And if we focus on the gratitude, then there's no room for resentment and hostility and anger. We're filling the space. The space is going to be filled with one or the other. If we fill it with gratitude, it displaces all of those negative emotions. Also, gratitude fuels me, right? The thing that I enjoy the most in doing this job and what drives me to do better is I love when people express gratitude for the things I've done for them or their association, right? And so we're looking for areas where we can bring gratitude into our life, both things that we can be grateful for and things that we can do that other people will be grateful to us for. And that creates a cycle of positive reinforcement. Okay, moving on, humility. Okay, humility. Why is this important? Kind of like gratitude, it is a quality or a trait that we can develop. Now, a lot of times, especially if we're not used to being in a leadership role or we're not used to being in a position of power, it's easy to let that little bit of power that we have, being on the board of directors or being a property manager or whatever, get to our head, right? We start feeling like we have this authority over other people because we are on the board, which may be true. But we have to counteract it or balance it with humility. Now, humility doesn't mean humiliation. It doesn't mean looking at everybody else as superior to us. It means looking at ourselves as right-sized, not too big, not too small. And most of the time, that looks like looking at everybody else as our equals, right? We are just a human as they are a human. And if we can focus on that and try to value and have compassion for other people's perspective and opinions as equal to our own, that will help cultivate humility. If we can say, I'm not that important where, everything I want or I need done has to be done, and we allow other people the freedom to be independent agents and do what they're going to do, and not try to control everyone and everything around us, that's a reflection of humility. And a lot of times the people who end up on the board, they end up on the board because they got issues around control. They want to be in control and control everything. And they have a hard time accepting the things they don't have control over. And to balance that out, to counteract that, we need to cultivate humility, right? And there are certain things that we are on the board responsible for controlling or responsible for making sure it gets done correctly. But if we always focus on cultivating humility or find opportunities where we can demonstrate humility or take more of a back seat or give other people right of way, then it's going to balance out the power, the position of power we have and the tendency to exercise that power in a tyrannical way. All right, and then the last acronym, but it might be the most important core value we're going to talk about, is integrity. Now, I want you to stop for a second and think about what's the difference between honesty and integrity. Give you a second. You can pause this video if you need to think about it longer. It's very important that we know the difference between that and that we cultivate integrity and not necessarily honesty. If we demonstrate or cultivate integrity, honesty will naturally follow. The difference is honesty has to do with telling the truth, and there's an implication that someone else is involved, right? Honesty is I'm being honest with you or with someone else or with the public. There's another factor in the equation. Integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. It is an internal, again, locus of control. It has to do with our character and our value system and who we are as a person. And there's lots of opportunity that you will come across in the HOA management space specifically, where there's opportunity for money to be skimmed, or money to go missing, or kickbacks, or other things that are not just dishonest, but wrong. And honesty boils down to, do we think someone else is going to find out? Whereas integrity has no bearing on whether anybody else knows. If we do it, our conscience will get the better of us. And so this is the critical component for success in HOA management. Okay? Honesty, if we demonstrate integrity, honesty will follow. There's a really good test or litmus test or marker that I like to use as an indicator of integrity. And it comes down to, do you put the shopping cart away when you're done using it? If you go grocery shopping or you go to Home Depot and you load your stuff in the car, do you take those extra 10 or 15 steps to put the cart back? There's no consequence for not doing that. There's no, you're not going to get fined. Most likely nobody's going to say anything to you. People are just going to ignore it. Do you make excuses for yourself as to why you shouldn't have to do that? It's someone else's job. I think at the end of the day, everybody knows the right thing to do is to put the shopping cart back. If you're not doing that, then you are a person who lacks integrity. You lack moral character. And if that's the type of person you are, then I ask you not to go any further in this course and not to get involved with your HOA. Unless you are willing to change that. And from this point forward, start putting the shopping cart back. If you are not willing to do that, then stop the course, send me an email, I will refund your money. The people who should be in positions of authority and leadership in a homeowners association or a condo association or your property manager should all demonstrate these 5 core values, but especially integrity. Because without that, the rest of it falls apart. There's too many situations where you can do the wrong thing and nobody will find out, that if you don't have this built into your character, into your moral compass, then everybody is going to suffer as a result. So if you feel like your board lacks integrity, the people on the board lack integrity, or you feel like your property manager lacks integrity, or the management company lacks integrity, then I urge you to get rid of one or all of those people that do and replace them with people who have this. If you or whoever is in charge cultivates these core values, you cannot lose. You cannot lose. Your HOA will not lose. You will win in the HOA management space. If you lack these 5 core values, or if your board or if your management company lacks these, on a long enough timeline, it will all fall apart. And it will end in pain and suffering for at least some people as a result of not executing our duties and our role with transparency, accountability, gratitude, humility, and integrity. So, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And if you've gotten through this and you found this valuable and you are aligned with these principles and core values, and if maybe there's some of these that you weren't quite aligned with, you're willing to bring yourself into alignment and cultivate them, then I look forward to moving forward in the course and us being able to add value and continue to develop you as a result. So thank you, and we'll catch you in a later module.